Yes, you can eat oatmeal without seeing a blood sugar spike, not just once as a lucky fluke, but repeatedly by eating it in the right way. In this video, I'll share 6 things that you can do to eat oatmeal without seeing your blood sugars shoot through the roof. But let's put these to the test. Come along with me as I test all 6 approaches. One of these worked way better than I expected. Some are newer strategies that I haven't really experimented with before. And others I've used successfully since I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes over 28 years ago. Let's start strong with the most powerful approach and the one I've had the most success with. And that is to not eat naked carbs. What I mean by that is I never eat my oats in isolation. Cooking my oats and then adding a protein can turn away my oatmeals from being a blood sugar time bomb. I have 2 ways that I do that. And the first way is that I add liquid egg whites to my oatmeal. I know this sounds super weird, but hear me out. The way that I do this is that I cook my oats fairly dry and then I whisk in liquid egg whites. Blood sugar success pretty much every time. I use liquid egg whites because they're pasteurized and it's just easier for me. My other protein source is protein powder. Here I cook the oatmeal fairly runny and then I add a scoop of protein powder. It is important to choose a protein powder that's not filled with carbs though. I choose one that has less than 5 grams of carbs per scoop. And that repeatedly makes it possible for me to eat oatmeal without seeing a blood sugar spike. I'll tell you why this works shortly, but first I want to highlight one of the common mistakes a lot of people might be making, and that is to cook your oatmeal with sweetened milk alternatives or just regular milk. Milk has lactose and lactose is a sugar. So for example, let's say that you cook your oatmeal with 1 cup of regular milk. You'll be adding up to 12 grams of carbs to your meal. And that might be the tipping point when it comes to a blood sugar spike for a lot of people. But back to why adding protein works. When you eat oats, starches break down into glucose, and insulin then allows glucose to enter your bloodstream. Protein slows down how fast food is digested. This means that glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually rather than causing a rapid spike. Moving on to the next thing that you can do, and that is to choose the type of oats that are the least processed. So I had no clue on whether or not this would be successful, as this is not something I'd really been experimenting with before. But I grabbed a box of steel-cut oats and started the experiment. For this, I took detailed notes, and I'd recommend you do the same as well for all of these different strategies. We're all very different. And the only way to know what actually works for you is by measuring the blood sugars, writing things down, and paying attention to trends. And the first thing I noticed in this experiment before I even got to the blood sugar part is it takes forever to cook steel-cut oats. Ultimately, I found that quickly boiling them at night and then letting them soak overnight before reheating them in the morning was the best approach. And what I found was that steel-cut oats in themselves, without even adding a protein, had a minimal impact on my blood sugars. And the reason why this works, and here we should probably also talk about another common mistake, but the reason why it works is that the more processed the oats are, the faster it gets digested. Instant and quick oats are partially cooked and already broken down. That makes glucose hit the bloodstream way faster. And not only that, if you then choose a packaged quick oats and don't pay attention to the ingredients, you might make the mistake of picking one with added sugar. That can mean an instant blood sugar spike. Steel-cut oats worked fairly well for my blood sugars even without adding a protein, which was fairly surprising to me. However, I didn't really enjoy eating them. I didn't like the texture. So for me, I'd rather stick with a no naked carb approach combined with some of the other approaches I'll be showing you. And one could argue that just cutting out oats altogether would be an easier choice. And it is that, a choice. But here's the thing, I don't believe there's anything we can't eat with diabetes. So if we choose to, we can make it work. And I assume that you, just like me since you're still watching this video, actually enjoy eating oatmeal. And it just so happened to be super healthy and even being hailed as one of the superstar foods for people with diabetes. Yes, it's a carb, but it's rich in soluble fiber, which gels in the gut and slows down digestion. And that has been shown to improve insulin sensitivity and lower post-meal glucose. Oats are also linked to improved cholesterol and heart health. And studies have shown that eating oats as part of a balanced meal can improve long-term blood sugar markers. Now I think we're determined that both you and I like oatmeal. Hopefully this means that you're also enjoying this video. If that is the case, please support me and the channel by liking the video and maybe even leaving me a comment down below. This tells YouTube that this video is worth watching. Moving on to the third as well as fourth way that we can eat oatmeal without seeing a blood sugar spike, we're building on that first strategy of no naked carbs. And this kind of works for me because adding to oatmeal, which is already something I like, just makes it even tastier. And what you can do is to add a source of fat. So like nut butter, seeds, or nuts. My favorite is to add a teaspoon of unsweetened crunchy peanut butter. The reason why this works is that fat slows down gastric emptying and also helps you feel full longer. It doesn't have to be a lot of fat, just enough to slow things down. A common mistake here is picking the wrong nut butter. Look at the label. You don't want to pick one that has added sugar. I like this approach, but I prefer to combine my first and my third approach, adding more protein as well as fat to my oatmeal. That creates a truly balanced meal that won't spike me, tastes great, and will keep me feeling full until lunch. It's a great approach, but a common mistake here is to add another sweetener. Let's say that you, for example, add a tablespoon of honey. Well, that blood sugar spike will for sure happen. Let's move on to the next thing that you can do to eat oatmeal without seeing that blood sugar spike. And this is actually so important, so effective, that you can use it for pretty much any other meal as well. And that is to pay attention to your portion size. Because the thing is, you might see a blood sugar spike if you eat a cup or a cup and a half of oats. However, you might not see that spike if you dial it down to half a cup or a quarter of a cup. I cannot tell you how much to eat. We're all very different. You have to test it out. And that can be as simple as measuring it out, writing down how it impacts you. You want to measure your blood sugars before you eat, and then an hour to an hour and a half after, or check your CGM, your continuous glucose monitor, if you have one. Your blood sugars should be back in range after that 1.5 hours. I found that I can pretty much easily tolerate around 20 grams of carbs of oats. That's about a quarter of a cup. And then of course I'll pile on the protein, and sometimes I'll also add a fat. No naked carbs here. Sometimes I'll eat more, and that's also fine, but the blood sugar impact might be a bit bigger. The reason why portion size matters is that even healthy carbs can overwhelm your system if you're eating too many of them. I think one of the most common mistakes is to wing it when it comes to portion size. I'm not saying that you have to use a kitchen scale to measure out your carbs every time. I mean, I do, but it's definitely not mandatory. Use measuring cups or kitchen scale every few days to just remind yourself of how much half a cup actually is. You'll be surprised at how often our eyeballing is way off. So that was 5 things that you can do to eat oatmeal without the blood sugar spike. We're not quite done yet, but I will say that of those 5, what I found are the most successful have been focusing on portion size and then adding protein. We've already determined that oats are a healthy, high fiber food, but we all know that even though they contain fiber, they do have the risk of raising blood sugars fairly quickly. So if you want to eat them naked, or if you just want to add another blood sugar spike in fighting strategy, you can add more fiber to your oats. Chia seeds, flax seeds, or berries work really well. Berries might be a bit of a surprising thing to add to oatmeal, but they're actually fairly low in carbohydrates and high in fiber, and they might even add a little bit of sweetness. Which also leads me to another common mistake, and that is to not really focus on which kind of sweeteners you're using for your oatmeal. If I want it sweeter, I'll add a bit of stevia. It has a minimal trace of dextrose, but not enough to impact blood sugars. But if you instead reach for something like syrup or sugar, you'll most likely eliminate all of the effects we've just discussed here and see your blood sugars shoot up. When it comes to fibers, I prefer to add a tablespoon of crushed flax seeds. It adds a little bit of extra texture, and I really like the nutty taste of it. For me, however, just adding more fibers to my oats doesn't really make a huge difference when it comes to blood sugar impact, but it might for you. That's the other thing. You might test out some of these strategies and not necessarily see the complete benefit that you'd want. This doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. Take notes and then find what works for you. You might also want to think about other things such as insulin if you inject insulin, your insulin dosing, your insulin timing. There's also things like hydration. How well did you sleep last night? What are your stress levels, your hormone levels? All of this plays a huge role when it comes to blood sugar management. What I learned from this experiment with oatmeal can actually be applied to a lot of other healthy carb sources, such as no naked carbs, adding protein, watching my portion size, maybe adding fat, and even adding a little bit of fiber can be really helpful. But there are things that I choose to not eat simply because I don't think they're worth it from a blood sugar perspective. You can check out what not to eat with diabetes in this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. This is Berber. Yeah, I said your name.